I was so annoyed last night. I sat down to watch the One Fighting Championship, and they're going to be on TNT, which I thought it was TBS. I find it's TNT, and it's going to start at 7 o'clock. It says it right there on the poster. Right there on all of their media and marketing. So I get a snack. I'm ready to go. Eddie Alvarez is going to fight. Demetrius Johnson's on the card. Rich Franklin's one of the announcers. I mean, everything's going my way. Turn the TV on. It's not on. It's on 3 hours later than they said that it was on. Now, I'm sure there's enough blame to go around there, including Chael's cable provider. Either way, that's annoying. It's terribly annoying. And when I end up watching the fight, Eddie goes to work. Eddie Alvarez just does what Eddie does, which is a sprint and overwhelm somebody, pounds them out, and they go home. But Eddie had punches that they deemed were back of the head, so they disqualified him. And I'm not sure they weren't back of the head and disqualifiable. It was just one of these weird situations, because if you go and watch it, Eddie's opponent is holding his hand, covering his ear. Now, he isn't trying to hold his ear specifically. He was just trying to block his head. But the way that it worked is he's covering his ear. The rule on those punches state anything coming from that direction, from behind, as long as your hand touches the ear, it's fair game. No matter how big your hand is, even if it was an elbow coming down where it could be 12 inches long. I mean, this is similar to what we saw on the feet with Cyril Gahn and Junior Dos Santos, that Junior is complaining. Because Junior for sure was hit in the back of the head where you're not allowed to touch. However, his ear was also touched, but it was a forearm. He had all this ground to cover. You guys staying with me? It's very relevant, because when the opponent is literally holding his ear, there is no way to hit the ear. That now became impossible. So now you're left to wonder, and I am too, by the way, I'm not passing judgment. Might have learned something here, but you are left to wonder, when they say you must touch the ear, is that literal, or is that more of a figurative, meaning that your hand is in that area? Because when the opponent reached up and covers his ear, you now cannot hit the ear. Are you with me? It's a real trick. It's a real tricky one. So where Eddie was hitting him, had the guy's hand been down, it would have hit his ear. But his hand wasn't down. His hand was covering the ear, and therefore Eddie, by definition, did not hit the ear and was disqualified. Maybe he should have been. I'm really not passing judgment. I'm just talking about this sequence, not to mention disqualification comes with, at least colloquially, a level of intent. And where Eddie's head was positioned, Eddie couldn't see. Eddie could not see where he was hitting. He was looping these punches all the way around. So first off, Eddie can't see where he's hitting. Second off, he was towards the back of the head. It would have included the ear had the guy not been covering his ear, but because he was, by definition, I guess they got to disqualify him. Whole thing was a mess. Whole thing's still a mess. I don't know where you go from there. I don't want something bad. I don't want any of us to tease the opponent. He did nothing wrong. Referee stepped in and called it. Is what it is. Could have called it a TKO. The opponent did nothing wrong. Then Demetrius fights. Now, this was the cool. Of all the things I've seen Mighty Mouse do, this might have been the coolest. Okay. Demetrius gets whipped. I've never seen that before. And he got out wrestled. I mean, Henry Cejudo couldn't out wrestle Demetrius Johnson. It's one of those things, like Demetrius's MMA wrestling is next level, but Demetrius was on bottom a couple of times. Okay, great. Nothing against Demetrius. We know his opponent's a very skilled guy. So when they're down, the opponent jumps up and knees him right in the face. 5 times worse than what Peter Yan did to Aljo. Knocks him out. Well, that's legal in one. They're fighting in Singapore. The grounded fighter rule does not apply the way that you guys would recognize it here in the States. It's not part of the unified rules. It's not part of the ABC at all. Completely legal, knocks Demetrius out. Chael, why'd you say Demetrius was cool? Well, because they asked Demetrius about the grounded knee rule after the fight. After he gets knocked out by this knee, of which was not a legal tactic for any part of his career until he gets over there. And you know what Demetrius said? He said, I really like that rule. He said, these are great rules. And I just thought it was a cool thing, It was a cool thing that the very rule is what bit him in the ass, got him knocked out, and cost him the fight. And he came out and defended the rule. Thought it was appropriate. That was my takeaway, man. Even if I was 3 hours late and my snack was cold and I had to watch it by myself because Joel had gone home, it was interesting. I mean, it was an interesting little show, and it was interesting that we did it. And not for nothing, it was good to see Rich Franklin. Rich Franklin should be calling all these fights. I hope that he does. Good to see old Rich. I haven't seen him in about 5 years.